All right, so today I got to talk more about, or start by talking more about this whole virus situation, because again, the numbers are up, but again, that just talking about the numbers, like most people know, or at least you should know, is very misleading because we're testing a lot more, and also on the flip side, the deaths are going way down, and stuff like that is making it seem not shows that we shouldn't be nearly as worried as we are. I mean. But anyway, this is from Canadian Yoda here, and they say the virus has killed 85 people under 50 in Canada in 2020, compared to lightning fatalities of approximately 125 people a year. So again, um, almost uh, as many people die of getting struck by lightning every year than people under the age of 50 that have died from this. And he says also, if you're over 50, you're more likely to die in a car accident than from the virus. Why lockdown? Politics. That's why. So again, let's check out this chart here and talk a little bit about it. So again, 0 to 19, there's literally been 2 people in Canada that have died. 20 to 29, 11, 30 to 39, 16, 40 to 49, 56. And then 50 to 59, you got 2.4% of the amount, 60 to 69, 7.3, 70 to 79, 18.3, and again, over 80, 71.1. So again, this is something that, again, we've known for a while now, but we're still pretending, for whatever reason, that there should be a one-size-fits-all policy when it comes to this. Why in the world are we making people who the virus is no more likely to kill them than the seasonal flu, which no one was ever paranoid about? Why are we forcing them to have the same restrictions as people who are older that actually need to be worried, or at least a little bit, not nearly as much as what the average person is still, but not like why? Why? It doesn't make any sense. Now, again, the argument they always come back at is, oh, well, if we let the younger people run wild, then you're going to spread it to the older people, which, number one, that's admitting they're wrong to begin with, because if they were right about the policies, they would never have made that argument. But number two, the idea of asymptomatic spread it doesn't bear out. And Dr. Fauci has said that asymptomatic spread is never what drives the spread of a virus. He said that directly. And he's arguably considered to be one of the world's foremost experts. Now, again, he's been wrong about a lot of stuff, but nonetheless, he is still considered to be one of the world's foremost experts, and that's what he said. So, again, and not to mention, too, they haven't provided us any evidence that asymptomatic spread is what's driving this. They haven't provided any evidence of that. And again, another thing that really bothers me is I've emailed some of my city councilors over the last week because, again, we just extended the mask mandates again, which is insanity. But nonetheless, and the goal of it was to, a few things. Number one was asking, okay, well, at what point do we admit we're wrong? Which I've only gotten a response from 2 people, and only one of them was even close to actually willing to have a conversation. And again, you couldn't get a straight answer on that. So the answer is never. We're just going to keep doubling down. Number 2 is, at what point do we stop listening to the quote-unquote experts, because they've been wrong about pretty much everything, right? And this is the insanity of these people, is that they make the argument of, oh, you inevitably point out that the at the start of this we were told not to wear masks and all this kind of stuff that these people talk about that isn't true now, which again it still kind of is, but nonetheless, and they say, oh, well, hindsight's 2020, we didn't know. But the one thing that we do know going forward is that the virus is significant. We're literally talking about probably the original death rate was supposed to be 3-4%. We now know that it's like 0.1, 0.2. Again, so the one thing that we do know is that it's not nearly as deadly as what we originally thought it was. So why are we still taking it that way? Why are we still taking it as seriously? They don't give you a straight answer on that one. And the other big thing that I've asked is, okay, well, what science exactly are we going off? Like, what science? And I asked him, can you point me towards a study or some clinical trials? Like, can you point me towards any of that? and nothing. And what they say when they mean we're going off the science is we are just blindly believing or blindly taking the advice of a very small group of people, usually doctors, right? That's what they mean when they're following the science, is we're just blindly believing the doctors, right? Even though I can find plenty of doctors that don't agree with mask wearing and lockdowns. I've shown many. I've shown epidemiologists. I've shown that kind of stuff, right? So again, they're ignoring the people that disagree with them just so they can continue to feed that echo chamber and to feed that confirmation bias. Now again, they make the same argument, but they're wrong about it. And why is that? It's because we've never tried the other side. We've tried all of the paranoid, delusional, doomsday people. We've tried all their ideas. We've tried them all. We've tried the lockdowns. We've tried the mask mandates. We've tried social distancing. We've tried all that BS. None of it has worked. We haven't tried the argument of the other side, and that argument being, okay, well, the virus it's not a threat at all to the younger people. Younger people should be able to go about their daily lives almost unaffected. I mean, if you are under 50 or even 60 to some degree, you shouldn't notice a difference in your day-to-day life, aside from maybe when you're interacting with older people. The entirety of the focus of the government, for dealing with this kind of stuff is how can we protect older people? Right? And by doing that, that doesn't mean just lock them in their homes and never let them interact with anyone, because I don't know. I mean, you'd have to talk to these people and get their minds on it. But I think at the start of this whole thing, or at the very least recently, I think that a lot of these people probably would have advocated for that. But the problem being is that if you tell them the amount of time it's going to take, like, this is not something that's going to go away anytime soon. We are going to have these measures for at least another year or two, probably, I would guess, or at the very least some resemblance of them. So again, if you tell people that are in their 80s or their 90s, yeah, you're not going to get to see your, or at the very least in a normal setting, you're not going to get to see your family members. You're probably going to die before you get that chance. Like, are they actually going to support that? I don't know. I mean, if it was me personally, I'd rather die and still get to enjoy my last time. But again, you'd have to ask these people. So anyway, that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. The next thing is from Clay Travis, and he says here, Joe Biden's entire campaign is virus fear porn. That's it, the entire campaign. And again, that is a very good way of putting it, in that Joe Biden's campaign basically is fear porn, right? He can't point towards a policy position that he's going to implement that's actually going to do anything, right? He never does that. He rattles off a million times it's, Trump has no plan. But again, the Democrats' plan was even worse than Trump's. If the Democrats would have been running things back in January and February, they would have waited longer to shut down flights from affected areas. And on top of that, they would have locked down even harder. Thus, more people would have been unemployed. The economy would have been hurt even more. So again, the Democrats would have did the worst of both sides, right? Like, the Democrats and the left were the ones that wanted to ignore it the most off the start, and they're the ones that wanted to lock down the hardest at the end. So that they have the worst of both worlds, because in reality, looking back on it, the right solution was take it seriously off the start. And as the numbers came in, the data came in that showed that the death rate's pretty much the same as the flu, take it less seriously, right? But the Democrats, they're and the left are the ones that wanted to do it the exact opposite, right? Which is the worst scenario, right? Because looking back on it, the worst scenario. I mean, here's the thing: when it comes to this whole situation, the governments are trying to balance the economy and the virus, and the worst thing you could do is, number one, implement a solution that's going to have the virus run rampant, and number two, destroy the economy. Like, that's literally the worst of both worlds. Again, that's what the left wants to do, and that's what Biden wants to do, right? So again, like, anybody voting for Biden is absolutely insane. Again, I'm not a big fan of Trump, but if you don't like Trump, you shouldn't be voting, or vote third party, right? Even though there isn't really a legit third party candidate that I'm aware of. But nonetheless, um, anybody voting for Biden is absolutely insane. Like and here's the thing, like a lot of the people that are doing it, at least be honest that the reason you're voting for Biden is because you don't like Trump, not because you believe in Biden. I think anybody who votes like that, I think, is a bit of an idiot. Because again, I mean, look at how well that worked out in Canada. Like a lot of people that were voting conservative were just voting conservative because they hated Trudeau. Like look at how that worked out. Like I don't think it's going to work out. And that's another thing too. Like I don't think it's going to work out. So anyway, like I say, that's a pretty important point to bring up. And then this is from World Alternative Media, and they say, when did the left start loving giant corporate monopolies and praise impoverishing hundreds of millions? Oh, right, it was just virtue signaling the whole time. Of course, they tokenized the underprivileged for their own gain. Now, again, this is something I point out endlessly, but it should be talked about a lot more because the reality is that they don't care about the poor. I don't know how much evidence needs to come out that shows that they don't care about the poor to get people to convince people of that. Right? It's all virtue signaling. If it wasn't virtue signaling, I mean, perfect example that I always bring up. All these leftists in California would be admitting that they were so wrong and that all these stupid leftist policies didn't work and they only made poverty worse. But no, the vast majority of them aren't doing it. What are they doing? Again, what do these leftists say when you point out the California and New York examples? What do they always say? What they say is that, oh, they didn't go far enough. That when you talk to these far leftists and these socialist types, again, they like to claim that they're center left or moderate left, but again, you're not moderate left. Like, come on. But anyway, what they always say is they don't admit they're wrong. They always just say, oh, they didn't go far enough. 60% tax rate isn't enough. We need 80, 90% tax rates, right? And when that doesn't work, it's okay, well, let's just take everything from the rich, right? Again, like these people are so insane, it is not even funny, and that's why they should never get power, because they'll destroy everything. It's insanity to take these people seriously. And again, the other part is the corporate monopolies part, right? Like when you talk to I always bring this up, these lefties in Alberta, these NDP and union idiots, they're all they ever talk about, like all they talk about is, oh, Jason Kenney and his corporate corruption and the UCP and all the corporate corruption, right? Like that is literally all they talk about. Or at the very least some resemblance of that. But yet when it comes to this kind of corporate, like when it comes to Twitter and Facebook and these literal borderline monopolies, right? Like the leftist argument against the best thing that they can come up with against being against the free market is always, well, if we have a free market, monopolies will form and they'll exploit people and all this garbage, which they don't actually have any examples of. They just make it up. But nonetheless, and then you have examples of about as close as you can possibly get to an actual monopoly in something like Google, and they don't care about any sort of corruption or anything that comes out of them. And why is that? Is because number one, they think it benefits them, right? And number two, they're just useful idiots, right? Because censorship usually comes back to bite people in the you-know-what, right? Like censorship usually comes back to bite people in the you-know-what. It just depends how long it's going to take. So again, this is a very important point that should be talked about a lot more in politics. Again, another perfect example of it is you have all these leftists that complain endlessly about, oh, well, Bezos and all these billionaires have gotten so much richer during this time when the average person's gotten poorer. Well, how stupid can you people possibly be? Again, I brought this up a lot before, but there's a lot of people that still don't understand this, and that you were the idiots that supported the policies that led to this. You supported the policies that have made the middle class poorer and the rich richer. Like, how stupid can you possibly be to support policies that anybody with half a brain knows is going to make the rich richer and the poor poorer, and turn around and complain about it afterwards? Like, how stupid can you possibly be? Again, it's just pure insanity that these people actually make these points with a straight face. So anyway, the last thing to bring up here is from Perry Belgrade, and he says, this is happening in Canada right now. Retweet if you support ending boil water advisories on First Nations. And again, this is something I brought up before as well, in that there's still a lot of native reserves that don't have clean drinking water. And I really don't understand this. I mean, number one, Justin Trudeau made it a campaign promise back in 2015. They still haven't done any of it, which, again, is just typical lefty, right? Like they all they're worried about is virtue signaling, right? Like they know that their base is dumb enough that they'll probably promise it next election because they, like I say, they know their base is dumb enough to forget they promised it the last time around. So again, look out for that. But again, the real point here is how hard can it be to get these people some water filters? Like, how hard can it possibly be? And it wouldn't even cost that much, right? Like, we're running a $500 billion deficit, and we can't come up with maybe $5 million. That's probably a rough estimate on what it would cost to get these people some water filters. Like, seriously, like I don't understand why it's so confusing. Now, again, I understand government is heavily bureaucratic and whatnot, but again, if it was up to me, it wouldn't be that way. So you can't really blame me or someone like me. But again, like, how hard can it be? Like, how hard can it be? And I think the reality is that these politicians that like to virtue signal all day and all night, at the end of the day, they don't care that much about these people. I'm not saying they're coming up with plans of, oh, how can we mess with the native people. Like, I don't think that's necessarily the case either. I just think that at the end of the day, they know that, hey, it's going to make me look really good politically to promise to give these people some clean water, but actually doing it requires a little bit of effort, right? So again, like, it can't be that hard to get these people some water filters. Like, it can't be that hard, right? And now again, the problem people come up with, oh, it's not a perfect solution. Well, again, like, is it a better solution than what they have? Like, filling up waters in a jug? Like, come on, like, having to boil it? Like, it's a heck of a lot better solution than that garbage, right? So again, like, I don't understand why it's so hard. Like, I really don't. But anyway, like I say, that's government for you. Again, another big problem here is government is way too bureaucratic and bloated. That is another really big problem, because if government wasn't so heavily bureaucratic and bloated, fixing this problem would be a lot easier. Like, it would be a lot easier. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. If you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, BitChute, Parler. All those links are in the description if you want to support my work. I also got some links for that. Like I say, make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure you check out those links as well.